Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General, thank you. Congratulations on the appointment, and thank you for your service to our beautiful nation and the monumental mission you have in front of you here. I'm from California, northern LA County. We are a state where we have a legal cannabis industry, but we're also a state, and especially in my district in the deserts above Los Angeles, where we're seeing a massive influx of an illegal marijuana industry. And I think it's being understated at local levels, at state levels, and certainly not appreciated at the federal level. I've been able to take a tour with the local law enforcement agencies to see it from the air. And I can tell you firsthand that if you remember the first time you went flying over a small neighborhood, your reaction was probably, wow, I can't believe there's this many pools in our neighborhoods. I had the same reaction when I toured our Antelope Valley area with regards to these illegal pot operations. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of these greenhouses being propped up in our deserts, in areas where frankly vegetation should not be growing. It's difficult to farm out here. What's happening is we have folks who are operating illegally on a black market who are stealing natural resources. They're stealing water. In many cases, the folks working these illegal pot operations are indentured servants illegally here, trying to make ends meet and being taken advantage. We have folks being local citizens being intimidated by some of these transnational criminal organizations that are running these illegal marijuana operations. The magnitude of this problem is staggering. And I know that the federal government, I know that DOJ under DEA has pots of money that do go towards eradicating these illegal marijuana operations. But it is at a magnitude, like I said, that's beyond comprehension, I think, and I really do believe it's worth the DOJ's attention, not only at the federal level but also in support of the local law enforcement agencies. My question is what, in your opinion, can be done from a federal level to help prosecute folks who are growing marijuana illegally? There's a series of charges that have been deemed really misdemeanors. The distribution, the sale, the growing of marijuana in California is treated as misdemeanors, but the stealing of natural resources, in some cases, the squatting on land, the intimidation against local residents for reporting.
This meeting is being recorded.
Is rising to the level of felony behavior, and frankly, it is a true security issue at the local level, but also national security. What can we do at the federal level under your administration and your leadership to help us eradicate the illegal marijuana problem?
Well, I'm not precisely familiar with the specifics, obviously, that you were able to see through your aerial flights. But the department's view on marijuana use is that enforcement against use is not a good use of our resources. I understand that's not what you're talking about. You're really talking about growing and manufacturing at a large scale. It's probably not a good use of our resources where it is regulated by the state. And again, I take it that that's not what you're asking about. So to the extent you're asking, for example, about transnational operations of large amounts coming from Mexico or of transnational operators who are coming into the United States to do the growing, these are certainly within our jurisdiction and within our scope of concern.
Well, thank you, Attorney General. I would love to host you out here to get you and your respective points of contact a first row view of what's going on out here. It is staggering. The local law enforcement agencies get about $19,000 per year from the federal government for overtime to help fight this. They hit that cap, that $19,000 limit, usually in June or July of each year, and it's frankly not enough. And like I said, we've had 7 dead bodies show up at these illegal grows here in Southern California just in the last few months. Would really appreciate hosting you out here and getting not only the DEA but also ATF and FBI representatives to see firsthand what we're seeing on the ground here. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. At this time, the chair. Thank you, Mr. Klein. Mr. Garcia, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General, thank you again for your patience. I just want to revisit the first discussion that we had about illegal marijuana operations, particularly in Southern California, just to close that out. I do want to clarify in alignment with your statements that these are definitely not legal operations. These aren't businesses that are being sanctioned underneath California's cannabis industry regulations, nor are they taxed. There's no oversight. There's no regulatory body touching them. And these are also not, I would say, mom and pop operations or single families with small illegal grows in their backyards. These are in Southern California, very large scale nurseries being put up in the middle of our desert. They are literally stealing water out of fire hydrants and out of California's aqueduct system. They are in some cases stealing land and squatting on these desert properties, and in many cases, over 90% of them using free labor in the form of indentured servants from people who are here illegally and don't have an ability to go to police like most employees would have. So this is truly a threat. It's a national security threat. It's an international threat. It's a domestic threat. And I would really welcome you to send a delegation out here to see it firsthand. This isn't a political thing by any stretch of the imagination, but I would love to have your commitment to have a small delegation from DEA, ATF, and if appropriate, FBI to come see it firsthand. We're starting to get traction with local law enforcement, but they desperately need the funding and support from the federal level. Would you be able to make a commitment to support at least a visit here to Southern California on this?
Well, let me have a chance to speak to the DEA about this, or to have one of my staff speak to the DEA and see what they know about the circumstances that you're describing. They certainly, the way you're describing them, of course, plus you mentioned, I think, 7 dead bodies being found, a combination of large-scale illegal activity, violence, indentured servitude. None of those are things that we should be ignoring. So I will be sure that the DEA looks into this.
Thank you, Attorney General. I truly do appreciate that. This is something I think all hands on deck, all levels of government is necessary to actually eradicate this. And like I said, it's actually bad for the legal cannabis industry as well. That's a sort of collateral negative effect. I do want to also go back to the conversation that we had around voter ID. I want to just tag up on my friend Representative Klein's comments and your response real quick to that. You mentioned that voter ID, the question with voter ID comes down to, does voter ID cause a disparate effect on certain demographics? I'd like to just get your sense of the answer to that, in your opinion. And I know you're not an election expert. I know you're not necessarily a social justice expert as well. But in your opinion, do you think requiring identification for the purposes of participating in an election does cause disparate effects on certain demographics? And if so, which demographics are those? Why does it cause a disparate effect, and what can we do to help that?
Yeah, so I should have added intentional or disparate impact, obviously. And the answer to that is in general is it depends on the particular jurisdiction and circumstances. It's not, the Supreme Court's made clear, and as I pointed out, the mere fact of requiring voter ID alone is not the issue. The question is whether it deprives individuals of the right to vote, and sort of what the risk on the other side, what the evidentiary risk on the other side of fraud is. So you can certainly imagine. You don't need to imagine. I think as a general, at a sort of a high level, The question is, are there people in demographic groups, for example, African Americans, who do not have voter ID for any number of reasons? They may not have, there may be people in poor and disadvantaged neighborhoods who don't have automobiles and therefore don't have driver's license, who are unemployed and therefore don't have those kind of identifications. So the question of having a photo ID is, and to many of us is, not a problem. Everybody we know has a voter ID, but that is not the case for many people all across America. And when it comes out that deprives people of their right to vote, we have a serious problem. And that is something that's determined on a case-by-case basis. And it is, as the chairman mentioned, it is a resource-intensive investigation to make a determination of whether in a particular circumstances voter ID has that consequence.
Thank you, Attorney General. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I do know a lot of Black people, Hispanics, poors of all demographic, and they certainly haven't had a challenge getting identifications. I think it's offensive to those demographics to imply that. But I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Well, Attorney General Garland, you have held up well under the withering fusillade of interrogation of this subcommittee. I thank you for joining us. And I look forward to further discussion of the full budget from the White House when we get it. In the meantime, I want to compliment you on the bipartisan nature of the portraiture behind you. It looks like we have President Gerald Ford's Attorney General, and obviously President Kennedy's and Johnson's Attorney General. A lot of people might not be familiar with Edward Hirsch Levi. If I pronounce his name correctly? Okay. He was said to be the top lawyer of his generation. I'm glad you have his portrait on the wall, not only because he was a Republican Attorney General, but because he was such a preeminent trial lawyer at his time.
I'm no art expert, but I do revere both of those attorneys general.
I also wanted to ask you, by the way, there was a prior predecessor of yours named Garland. It was Attorney General Augustus Garland, who was Grover Cleveland's Attorney General. I take it you're his great-grandson.
No, and my understanding, he's in a famous Supreme Court case involving a pardon of a Confederate sympathizer. So I think I'd like to keep distance from him.
You're disowning him, all right. Well, Attorney General Garland, thank you for favoring us with your presence today. We'll have you back, and we'll have more questions about the direction of the Department of Justice and the funding that it requires over time. Members of the subcommittee and Attorney General Merrick Garland, this hearing is hereby adjourned.